There's plenty in tonight.
Yeah.
It's good.
Good evening to everybody. For those that are new here this evening, my name is Mark. I have been an Adobe Lightroom Classic trainer for the past decade, helping other photographers understand what Classic Lightroom can do for you, sprinkled with some Photoshop knowledge. I am an award-winning qualified photographer and educator. And what I mean by that, I hold a foundation degree in media production, BA honours in photography, and a master's in photography, all from the University of Plymouth in the UK. I've also been awarded by the Royal Photographic Society, both the licentiate and associate distinctions. And I've been a commercial photographer for over 30 years. And this is a way that I give back to the community of photography. My knowledge and experiences for Classic and Lightroom. On a Monday evening, I host a community and we look through a semester, a theme. So we've just started editing. And for the first hour, we look at a particular task in that editing workflow. And then the floor is opened up for the second hour for your questions and answers. On a Wednesday, I host this Lightroom short, I call it. It's approximately 30 minutes. And we drill down on a particular task and we have a discussion about why I do these things. And it's here to help you and to get you to think, not necessarily to change your workflow or to tell you what to do, but it's, oh, I didn't realize I could do that. And could I take an element of that and speed up your workflow to return you to the field of photography rather than sitting in front of Classic or Lightroom or Photoshop or any other app that you may use? So this evening, we're going to look at renaming your files and why I believe you should rename your files. Now, firstly, you can actually rename or change the manufacturer default in most digital cameras these days. And I rename them in camera because I have multiple cameras. For my sins, I am a Nikon photographer and I have from the Z30 7 cameras all the way through to the Z9. And identifying, looking at an image immediately, what camera I shot that image on is quite important to me because it tells me lots of information just knowing the camera. For example, pixel size. For example, how old is that file? And I can tell that from the file name because I've put in my file structure the actual name of the camera. So my files start Z30, Z5, ZFC, Z62, Z72, Z8, and Z9. That is all a part of my file renaming workflow. Then I have at the end the shutter actuation number, which is all done in camera. So depending on your brand, if you wish to rename, you can go in and rename your images and put the name of your camera. So 5D Mark II or R7, R10. And then that's if you've got multiple cameras. I suggest that. Then we get to renaming within Lightroom Classic. And I'd like to show you what I do and how we can rename. So if I share the screen, and before I show you how we can rename, what I'd like to do is show you the reasons why I rename. So this is my renaming policy. This is a Photoshop file. And this tells me a lot of information within the the information panel. So I've got 3 initials at the beginning of my file renaming. That tells me who owns the copyright. I'm a portfolio photographer. I shoot for different people. And sometimes the commissioner, the the newspaper, the corporation, we've negotiated the release of the copyright. They've paid me a lot more money. So I have this workflow of the first three letters, MSP, is me, who owns the copyright. Now, all this information comes from the camera. The next set of numbers are the date. So in the UK, this is 2019. It was shot on June 06. I accept that other parts of the world, they do it the other way around, but it's June 23rd. So I know that I own the copyright to this image, and it was shot on the 23rd of June, 2019. The next set of numbers are the time that it was shot. So it was shot at 5 minutes past 12 and 22 seconds. Now, because digital cameras can take several exposures per second, I include the shutter actuation number. So this image was taken on a Nikon D3S, and the shutter actuation number in this instance was 1,749. I've actually processed this and I've added an addition to it. It was an HDR image and I've exported it, and it's this year, it's 1,599 is my image number when I've externally edited it from Lightroom Classic. So this gives me a lot of information without looking at the exif data. I know that it's a 12 million pixel file. I know it's an HDR. I know I've taken it into Photoshop. I know the date, the time, who owns it. And all that in my workflow is important. And I hope just saying those things might provoke you in thinking, well, what does the file mean to you? The file name mean to you? How can we find these files quicker? For example, if you're a wedding photographer, you could sell your package of, let's say, 100 images. And rather giving the bride and groom random numbers, you can export with the bride and groom's name, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 100. So there's no gaps in your file sequence. Why would you do that? Well, I've heard stories over the years where the bride and groom has gone, well, there's a gap. It's 17, 34, 45, and there's missing images. And you haven't give those to the client. Could be out of focus, poor composition, or you just preferred that other shot that you gave them. Well, by renaming them on export, you're not giving them that information to say, well, where's the missing images? You're just giving them the 100 images, 1 to 100. So let me show you how we can rename our images. So in the library module, under the library menu, there's this renaming menu. And we can put in here presets. So we're going to go edit, and it brings up the template editor. Now, the template editor has got lots of information in here, and we can select from these drop downs below the box of what is it going to look like. And what I can do is I can reset this file name. Okay, so original file name. So if I wanted to, I could rename, take it back to the original file name. So you see it's missing off the edit. I go back to, let's find a quick image. Let's go back to this image here. These are all either my images or images that I have my stock license that I have a license to use. So I'm going to rename this. It's going to go back to the original file name. There we go. Oh, it came in as that name. So that was the original file name. But what we can do is we can rename these images whatever we want to do. So let's make up a export renaming system. So let's call this place is called Lundy. So I want the name to start with Lundy. and I want to say, right, okay, tell me some information about the file. So we've got file name. Okay, so we can put suffix, folder name. Some of this is irrelevant to a lot of photographers, but bear in mind, you've got to remember Classic is the industry leading software, and it's got to be for every photographer. So we've got now original file name, suffix, copy name. Okay, so we've got information about the image, but now we've got sequences. So we can start with sequential, image number, total, and it will start with 1, and so it'll go in a single digit, or we can put a 3-digit format. So now you can see it says Lundy 001. And if I was exporting more than one, I could have 002, 003, 004, and so on. But I can put additional text in, underscore. And we can see from the example, it says Lundy _1. I can put in date and time if I wish. So if I wish, Lundy, and I can put in there year. So there we go, year underscore. So we now got Lundy 2009-001. So this will preserve my original file name, and when I save this and use this as an export, it's going to export this with these characteristics. What else do we have? We have all the information in our metadata. So in our metadata, we could have a bride and groom or a location, and it would pull out the metadata from a keyword, creator, city, anything you want it to do that's held within your exif or IPTC data. And it will take that information within the library module and use that in your file renaming. So I'm now just going to save this as a new preset. I'm going to just call this export Lundy. Okay, so I've saved this now as a export Lundy because I'm going to show you how to export it. So I'm going to go done, press cancel. When I go file, export, and I'm going to come down to the renaming, rename to the preset that I chose, and I'm going to show in Finder. I want that. That. Let's go export. It's going to pop up a Finder in a second. There we go. And you can see it says Lundy, the year, and 01. Now, if I had multiple images, let's go G, grid, and just take those images there, do the export again. This time I'll put it into a folder called Lundy. I'm going to add back to the catalog, export. And now it's doing the 6 files. And you can see it's got 01, 02, 03, 04, 05, 06. So I've renamed these something that's relevant to give them to my client. So that's one way you can use renaming. The other way is on import. So I have a file to import, let's say. So we can go to the file. Let's see if I can find something to import quickly. There. Support. Training to import. There we go. So I've got some here, and it says image 5. So I'm just going to uncheck all those. I'm just going to import one. And on the right-hand side of the screen, we have file renaming. And I can click on the box and I can select any of the presets. So the current file is called image 5 at the moment. Well, let's just use a preset that I have already. And let's import it. All I've done is I've selected the preset. It's going to re-import it. And there we go. So my initials, the date, time, and the original file name. It's done that immediately on import. And that's part of the workflow, importing and renaming on import. So how do I set this information up? So let's go back. It's exactly the same as I showed you for the import. Rename photo, edit. And we can put anything in here, anything we want at all. We can type anything. So, and it's lower and uppercase. So I'm going to type in some initials and I'm going to tell it to select the date. So I've got this date format, year, month, day. And I've got that in 4 digits. I've got it in 2 digits, whatever I wish to do. So I'm going to select that and it's now giving me this up here. So I can take the space out that I put in. There we go. Let's just do that again. There we go. I can put an underscore to separate. And again, if I wanted the time, so I'd go down to the sequence and date section and I'd go hours. And then I'd select minutes and select seconds. And I could do underscore. And now you can see I'm building up this file renaming structure. Okay. It could be, I've put this LRM. It could be New York. Okay. You could have a file structure or a renaming structure of where you took your images, or it could be of a baseball team or of a cricket team or something, the name of that. And you'd know in your file name who it was. If that's your workflow, you can do that here. So I've got New York. So let's say this was a project. I was photographing the streets of New York. The date, that information, whilst it's in the exif data, is actually, I need to know straight away when I look at the file, rather than click, 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 and finding the file and finding the information. I've got this here automatically. So date, hour, minute, seconds, and the original file name. And now I'm going to save this as a new preset and call it New York. Okay. So now I could, if I wanted to, I could rename this file. So we go into metadata. Let's just make this a Y. And we've got this file name here. And I can just select New York. And it would give me the example it's going to rename it. Press OK. And I've now renamed that individual file or group of files. So if I had several images, if I wanted to rename all of these, I could do so just by Command A, select all, and then click on my file renaming. And then I could just rename them. It's giving me an example what it's going to look like. Press OK. And then now all renamed. And it tells me who owns the copyright, the date it was taken, and the original file name. So it's very, very, very powerful. Now, what I could do with all this, let's say I made a mistake, Command Z would undo them, but I could create a file. Just like this, and click on the right place. I could create original file name, and I'll show you how to do that. So you want to go back to what it was when it imported. So you can have this as a backup, disaster recovery, something like that. If I press OK, they've all gone back to the imported file name. So how do you do that? Go to Library, Photos. We're going to go to the editor. And it's actually in under Image Name. We've got this drop down that you can select, Original File Name. So all we do is we select the original file name, press Insert, and then whatever the original file name is, it will show it at the top. And then all we do is we save that. So I've got it already saved as original file name. And if you want to change your renaming structure, that's what you could do. You could select all your images, revert them to the original imported file name, then rename them. Okay, and that's it. And that's renaming. nice and simple way of working out what you perhaps you'd like to do with your file renaming. But working out a workflow, a whole global structure, am I going to put them in? Am I going to keep them in manufacturer's default, which don't really mean anything apart from how many pictures you've taken? Or am I actually going to work out a structure that, where it was taken, what the narrative is, when, and the shutter actuation, what camera you took it on if you have multiple cameras like me. So there's lots of different permutations you do, but it's a valuable piece of information that I have saved so much time on. Does anybody have any questions about that?
I,
Yes, Jay.
in a way, uh, you have to decide keyword or file name because, do you, it's important to keep the date and time the picture was taken, but then it's the subject or project. And I've been thinking of, that's how you do the keywords. But what you're saying is I should think about putting that in the title, the file name. So, there's a trade-off there between file
Mhm.
name and keyword.
Mhm.
Um,
You could do both. By having it in the file name, you're saving time by going to look for the exif data.
right,
Yeah, you're
right,
not going over expanding the metadata panel, changing it from IPTC to exif. That's 3 clicks. And if you're doing that for 20 times, yeah,
right,
if you've got it in the file name, it's I for information, and that comes up top right hand corner. But you can just go to a text search and type a date in and search your file names as well as searching the exif data anyway. But you could
right,
just say, show me all the pictures in this folder or in this collection that contains 2019.
right. And I really agree that working with the exif file can be actually complicated and a pain in the
Mm-hmm,
ass. Um, for instance, scanned negatives, if I try to change the creation date,
mm-hmm,
you can't change a whole group of files to the same creation date
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
because it doesn't offset.
Yep.
For instance, if you took some files one day and in scanning some files a second
Mm-hmm,
day, you can't. So you have to go through and change each one
mm-hmm,
individually through creation date, which is a pain. But what you're suggesting is if I want this whole group of files that I've scanned in history to be at the one date they really were taken, I put that
mm-hmm.
in the file name.
You could put that in
That
the file name,
that would
yes.
be that would be so much easier
Mm-hmm,
than going through each one and changing its creation
mm-hmm.
date.
Yep. Yeah.
Uh, again, um, Lightroom is really designed for current photographers.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so much designed for dealing with pre-digital
It,
photographs.
it, the whole thing about Lightroom Classic, Lightroom, Photoshop, third-party apps, working in the cloud is understanding a workflow. And that's
Right.
actually the hardest bit, is
Yes.
what to do, when to do it, why you're going to do it, what does it mean to you? And that's actually the majority of the time that trainers spend is going through a workflow. We all know how to change the exposure. We all know how to use the tone curve. We all know how to, and that's just practice and repetition. But if we get the workflow wrong, we mess everything up because things are in different places and different this and so on. So it's really, and I can't tell you what your workflow is. I can provoke you to think about particular areas about it, but it's your second nature. It's how you want to use the technology and use the information. So in my case, the renaming the first three initials might not, it's irrelevant to other people because they only shoot for themselves and a stock agency or whatever. It's totally, I shot for this newspaper, that magazine 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I now know from the file name they own the copyright. I have a license to use it, self-promotion, but I can't put it with the stock agency because I don't own the copyright. And the first three letters, so it's that workflow. Those first three letters identify that to me, and that's my workflow. So you might want to put the date. You might want to put the narrative at the start. So it's working out
Right.
how does your mind work and what the information is relevant to you. But all the information's in there. And I'm
Right.
suggesting that in your case, you will put the date in your file name, perhaps some form of narrative. So canoeing, the date, or cycling in your case, isn't it? Cycling, the date, and then you shut your actuation number. Or perhaps cycling is not important to you, but the date is the main thing that's important to you, and the shutter actuation number. You might want to put something in the file name to identify that it's a scanned film.
Right.
Or what is the film? Was it Provia? Was it Velvia? Was it, Kodachrome? Was it Ektachrome?
Right.
Yeah, you might want to put that in the file name. That's relevant to you.
Now, the other thing I think is that Lightroom, as you're making changes, it changes the exif file in really good ways. For instance, you can go back to the original file name because I bet in exef it keeps the original file
Correct, it
name.
does. In the catalog, it does.
Yeah, that's how it can go back.
Yeah.
Well, it's what you see when you look at the exef. Now, is that actually in the file? In other words, when you rename, you've actually renamed on the hard disk the original file.
No, it reads, when it imports, it reads the file. It
Right.
only writes the file when you export it.
Okay. Would it if you export it, would it put the original file name into the exif?
No, I don't think it would do.
So it's like a sidecar, the exef,
Yeah.
only
Yeah.
for
But
the catalog.
Yeah. You can set it up, the catalog, as sidecar, yes.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Although thank you, the file rename I think is really important for me.
Tonight's been about provoking you to think about what could I use it for, what information. And it's really it's one of those hidden things. If you never use it, never think about it. In conjunction with this, or if I did that as well, you speed up your workflow dramatically. If you knew you went to this event or this party or you went to this place on this day, there's several ways that you could find that image. One of them would be just search file name, type in the date, and because it's in the file name, it comes up with all the images that you took, irrespective of where you stored them. And if you had a smart collection, you could either search by file name, search by exif data. There's multiple ways of doing date searches in different ways. So it's about provoking you to think about, in conjunction with saying, if you've got several cameras, renaming them with your camera, so you know immediately what camera it was taken from. Oh, that was, or what film it was taken on. Because when you scan it, it doesn't have that film in there.
Right.
But that's important information to you. Was it this? Was it that? Was it ASA 100, ASA 800, etc., etc. That's important information that doesn't come across to the scan.
Right. And the wrong camera comes across in the scan too.
Yeah.
And the wrong date, the wrong date,
yeah,
the wrong camera. It doesn't have the ISO. It doesn't have the film.
But the thing is, you press I and that information comes up straight away. It's not a click here, a click there, and a click down there to get that information. If you need to do that on 100 images, that's 300 clicks.
Right. Yeah. Oh,
You could build a smart collection, and there's all the images in front of you with the answer because you've got it from the file name. You could do it from the exif data, yes, because there's not one way of doing one thing.
no, I can confirm this past week I spent a couple of extra hours because I was trying to deal with the EXF. And if I had just done the file name, I would have spent 5 minutes.
Hmm.
So I can confirm that.
Okay. Right. Okay. Well, we'll leave it there. My website is lightroom.support, and there's lots more information. There's lots more on my YouTube channel, which is Lightroom Mark. Lots of free videos. This recording will be up by Friday at YouTube Lightroom Mark. Lovely to meet you all tonight. Thank you for coming.
Thank
Have
you.
a great evening. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.